Welcome in to Kick in the Rear podcast, episode 21. My name is Joe Yarshin. Today we're going to be reviewing Cashflow Quadrant by Mr. Robert Kiyosaki. I have done several of his books in the past. I've read them, reviewed at least one on this channel, and the Rich Dad series is very comprehensive. It includes many different aspects of financial literacy, but this one is the guide to financial freedom. This one is the Mac Daddy of them all, as far as I'm concerned. So without further ado, let's get into it. So right away, what is the cash flow quadrant? I want to show it to you just so you can see. So this little chart here, E, S, B, and I, they each have a corresponding letter that stands for employee. S is for small business or self-employed. B is for big business, and I is for investor. Ideally, you want to operate out of all four quadrants. Kiyosaki talks about this throughout the book. That's what the book's about. But essentially, in chapter 1, he introduces this concept and discusses how important it is to operate out of each category. And most people never operate out of more than one. So most people operate out of the employee category of the cash flow quadrant. So chapter 2, he discusses changing quadrants is often a change at the core of who you are. A lot of the core differences in the ESB and I are basically that, employees will stay W-2 employees their whole life. The self-employed person might get out of that. They might control their day. They might schedule their own hours, but essentially they're working for themselves, and they're working, if not more than they were in the E quadrant. The business quadrant is that business owner that's a little more hands-off. And then the I quadrant is someone who invests. So basically he discusses the difference between these, what it looks like, and bringing it together. So in the entrepreneur setting, these are all important to operate out of at some point. And he argues that you can operate out of all four at the same time, or you can operate out of just two or just one, depending on what you want to do with your life. So just chapter 2 is just very long and goes into each step again. So chapter 3, many people seek job security because that's what they're taught both at school and at home. So following the script, he says why people seek job security, trapped by debt. As soon as you get out of school, you have student debt. As soon as you get out of school and you need a job, what else do you need? You need a house, you need a car. So you're just getting in more debt, and it's the cycle of financial dependency on the W-2 income. So he calls it a success trap, a money trap. Your two biggest expenses, usually a home and your student debt, searching for financial freedom. And then chapter 3, he also discusses taxes and tax advantages and how taxes are expressed differently depending on which quadrant you're operating out of. So he, on page 69, reviews income and expenses and balance sheets with assets and liabilities. We've discussed this on previous podcasts episodes. So skip to chapter 4. Chapter 4, he says your goal is to own a system and have people work that system for you. 3 main types of business systems used today are traditional C corporations, franchises, and network marketing. He talks about what all of those are, and then how to get into each of those. He discusses that. Chapter 4, he also discusses personal franchises. Let's review chapter 5 next. So chapter 5, investing is the key to financial freedom. He discusses learning how to invest. Playing Monopoly growing up was a good teaching tool for him. He said his rich dad played Monopoly in real life. So just a lot of good stories in there as well. He discusses 401ks are for people who are planning to be poor when they retire. That always makes me laugh just because every single company competitively and corporations, they offer this 401k. And, that's great if you're not thinking about actively managing your retirement account. So for the average person, a 401k contribution might make a lot of sense. But for the savvy investor, you want to take a more active role in your retirement. And that's what he discusses a lot throughout this book. He says 5 different levels of investors. Level 1 is the zero financial intelligence level. Level 2 is the savers are losers level. Level 3 is I'm too busy level. Level 4, I'm a professional level. And then level 5 is the capitalist level. So he breaks down each of those, starting out with nothing, how to become a capitalist. Where are you in that journey? And then he says it's your choice, basically, at which one you want to do. So he discusses a final word on investing on page 113. He gives some examples of financial literacy terms, such as ROI, return on investment. In chapter 6, he discusses money as an idea that is more clearly seen with your mind. So I like this one as well. So he discusses some, again, anecdotal stories about that. The average person is 95% eyes and only 5% mind when they invest. If you want to become a professional in the B and I quadrants, you need to train your eyes to be only 5% and train your mind to see the other 95%. Training your brain to see money. Know what real risk is. Bad advice is risky. Your advisors are only as smart as you are. Is your banker lying to you? So this was kind of an interesting section on page 126. Again, he reviews balance sheets, assets, liabilities, specifically about your mortgage on page 127. On page 128, what happens when you pay off your mortgage, definition of real estate, interest rates, industry average, rates of return. What about your savings? Are those assets? He goes into your balance sheet as far as assets and liabilities, as far as your savings and your balance on your checkbook is concerned. And then your bank's balance sheet, he says, their assets and liabilities are basically the reverse of that. So he discusses why you don't get a tax break for saving money. They get your savings anyway in the bank, which, again, I work for a bank, so, banking is integral for a lot of things, and central banks play an important role in society. So, I think that he expresses his ideas of financial freedom from a very blunt perspective. So I like that. And then he discusses his cash flow quadrant. Again, on page 138, importance of facts versus opinions. Chapter 7, the real issue is the changes you must go through and who you become in the process. So he says that there's many changes you go through when operating out of each quadrant, but he says money is a drug. He said Rich Dad used to always say money is a drug. The main reason he refused to pay us while we worked for him was because he never wanted us to become addicted to working for money. If you become addicted to money, it's hard to break that addiction. So there's a great story in Rich Dad Poor Dad about that, and then he kind of just callbacks that story here. So he basically says if you're an employee and E works for the system and S is the system, a B or a business owner creates, owns, and controls the system, and an I, an investor, invests money into the system. And then let's see here, page 165, chapter 8. So how do I get rich? He says, if you do what everyone else does, you'll wind up having what everyone else has. Talks about monopoly again. So 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. Discusses the reality of that. He discusses the instructions of be, do, have, which I thought was a good section. Let's skip to the end here. Chapter 9, he says the rich create money. Chapter 10, on page 217, he says you've got to walk before you can run. So taking baby steps toward your financial freedom, operating out of each business quadrant is important. Talks about short-term vision, having desire for immediate gratification, and rejecting that concept, but then how it can compound as well. So If you want to be rich, you've got to change your rules. He talks about industrial age financial statements. Again, great graphics in here with the income statements, balance sheets, assets and liabilities. Page 222 and 223. 3 different cash flow patterns he discusses here. So then 7 steps to finding your financial fast track. Step 1 in chapter 11, it's time to mind your own business. So we're programmed to mind everyone else's business and ignore our own. So some quotes here. He says some words of advice maybe you've heard of growing up. Go to school, get good grades so you could find a safe, secure job and pay with good pay and excellent benefits. Work hard so you could buy the home of your dreams. After all, your home is an asset and your most important investment. He rejects all of these. Having a large mortgage is good because the government gives you tax deduction for your interest payments. Buy now, pay later, or low down payment, easy monthly payments, or come in and save money. He says people who blindly follow these words of advice often become employees, making their bosses and owners rich. They often become debtors, making banks and money lenders rich. He says people become taxpayers, making the government rich, and they become consumers, making other businesses rich. So taking action. So 1, he says to fill out your own personal financial statement. 2, to set financial goals. Part A of that, discussing a 5-year financial goal. Part B is a 1-year goal. And then C is using his 5-year goals, complete financial statement again to show how it will look 5 years from today. He gives a really awesome example of this income statement and balance sheet broken down into category on page 237. Chapter 12, take control of your cash flow. He says people who cannot control their cash flow work for those who can. A lot of graphics again here. Let's go back here. 13. Step 3 of that, he says, know the difference between risk and risky. Business and investing are not risky, but being undereducated is. So he talks about cash flow management, financial literacy, financial intelligence. Again, define risk in your own words. Chapter 14, step 4, decide what kind of investor you would like to be. So start small, learn to solve problems. Talks about, again, the type C investors, type A and B as well. How to get on the fast track faster. Can you be all 3 types of investors? Why you should get started immediately. Problems can lead to opportunities, and so forth. In chapter 15, he says, seek mentors. So this is a common theme in all of the books I've reviewed in the investment real estate space. A mentor is someone who tells you what is important and what is not important. More importantly, what's not important, I think. So mentors tell us what's important. Reverse role models, spiritual role models, the power of temptation. He discusses find someone who's been there, take action. So yeah, this is a great chapter again. Chapter 16, step 6, he says, make disappointment your strength. I've heard this most recently. Andrew Tate talks about being disappointed as fuel and to help motivate you. He says, inside every disappointment lies a priceless gem of wisdom. Expect to be disappointed. Have a mentor standing by. Be kind to yourself. Tell the truth. Make mistakes. Start small. Take action. Chapter 17, step 7, the power of faith. He says, the only person who determines the thoughts you choose to believe about yourself is you. So, again, he just gives some examples and life lessons that he's gone through himself. In the last chapter, it's a summary. Begin building pipelines of cash flow to support you and your family. Again, there might seem like a lot of redundant topics of financial literacy in this book, but it was not redundant. It was very different from the first book. The first book was a foundational book. This book kind of just takes the next step into financial freedom and really inspired me more than any of the other books I've read to get going and to take action on this path. In the past, I read this book and reviewing it again, just kind of like confirm some of these concepts that are just really foundational again and important, and some of them are advanced. So overall, hard to give this book anything less than a perfect score, especially it being my favorite of the cash flow quadrant Rich Dad books. This is the number one. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, please like, review, share with anyone you know that's interested in financial freedom, financial literacy, and real estate investing specifically. Hope you enjoyed it again today. I'm going to be taking less time off, hopefully, for the next book review. I got bogged down with some activities, but I'm back on the schedule. So bippity boppity investment property. Let's go.